Will you be the winner of this quilt kit? Oh my goodness, I sure hope so. I want to show you how to make this quilt from the Fabric Hut. It's a beautiful floral quilt, and you can see by looking at it, it's not complicated. You can make this quickly. The best part though is this kit is pre-cut. So all the fabric is cut in exactly the size you need. All you have to do is open the package and start sewing. Plus the binding and plus the backing is included. So this is an awesome deal. I'm Lea Louise from Inspired Quilting by Lea Louise, and I'm really excited to share this with you. And what I need you to do is to watch this video, like this video, make a comment on this video, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and that will get you into the contest. So all the details are down below. Make sure you get your information in because you have until Sunday the 14th of April to get your name in the ring in order to win this. I am so excited. So take a look at how this quilt goes together and make sure you get signed up to win this quilt kit. What is more fun than opening a package with some new fabric? Well, maybe it's opening a package that has some quilt kits. Oh my goodness, look at what I got. The Fabric Hut has 3 new quilt kits that they wanted me to do samples of and to demonstrate how to make them. Well, not only did I get one to use and make for you to show you how it's done, but there's a second one for a giveaway. Oh my goodness, how exciting is this? Now, there's even another exciting part that these are all pre-cut. Look at this. Everything is cut to size. So my rotary blade and my rulers are going to be moved off the table because I don't need to use these. We are going to go straight into the package, open it up, and start sewing. Now, the best part about these kits, this is the first one we're going to make, and I'll show you. It's like a brick pattern, and it's really pretty. I'm trying to think. Yep, okay, so the pattern's inside here, but look at this. We even have the backing fabric for each of these quilts. That is fantastic. So we're going to work on this one today, but I want to show you the other two as well. Here's one called the Charlotte, and it looks sort of like, you know, a interwoven ribbon of fabric. Oh my goodness, that looks pretty. And then what do we have here? Oops. Have you ever seen, I'm going to go ahead and just open this carefully. I call them coin quilts, where you have narrow strips lined up together. This right here is just a notification that if you bought the kit, everything is pre-cut, and you can skip the instructions on how to cut everything. But check this out. Isn't that pretty? Oh my goodness. And everything is pre-cut. That is just so incredible for me. That's a time saver. We're talking hours of time. So there we are. I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and I have the backing fabric. And look, isn't this pretty? It's a pretty white tone on tone. So it's got a lovely little floral, not a floral, but a foliage print on the fabric. So that's going to be awesome. All right. So excitement, a new quilt, and somebody's going to win a set with the kit, with everything included, even the binding and the backing. So let's go ahead and get started. We are going to make a quilt. So let's go ahead and get it opened and find out what we're working with. I'm going to set the backing aside because we will be using that a little later. But look at this. Oh, and the binding. How perfect. And I love that it's a mix of all the colors. Oh, that'll be so much fun. And these are all die cut. Oh my gosh, they're perfect. Look at that. I love it. And the edges are nice and straight. We don't have all those zigzag edges that can be so challenging sometimes to sew because we're never quite sure where the edge falls. And look at this. Oh, and look at all the fabrics. It looks like there's 9 different fabrics. When I was looking at the pattern, And look at, they're just so pretty. Oh, this is going to be wonderful. So there it is. There's the quilt, or the quilt top, I should say, and it's going to go together easy. So we've already saved a few hours because we don't have to cut anything. I love it. I'm just going to pull the pattern out, and let's see where we are. So this is what the quilt's going to look like. It's called the Prairie Flowers. Again, it's from the Fabric Hut, and they are so good to us. Oh my goodness. I want to thank them for the quilt, the opportunity to make this quilt, and to give one away. That is so exciting. And then here, if you're going to make it yourself, because you can buy a lot of these patterns individually, but the kit is a great deal. Oh, and it's on sale right now. The links for all this will be down below. They're also having a rotary blade sale. So I'll put those links underneath in the description. Make sure you check that out. But if you were to want to make, once you make this, if you want to make your own, make another one, there are multiple sizes, 5 different sizes. You're going to use 9 colors for your strips. And then all the squares, the binding, the backing, it's all included here. And of course, we have a quick color chart of the different fabrics that are included. Here are the instructions, everything, including how to put it together, cutting it if you're going to make another one and do your own piecing, then you'll be able to follow the directions. And then you have the assembly of the quilt. Now, these are put together in individual pieces. I'm going to chain piece these, and I just think that's going to be faster. So I'll show you how we do that. That'll be the only thing I think different than how this quilt is put together. And you can see it's just multiple rows. What I like is that the fabrics are all intermingled. So I can go through and just, sew one at a time and not worry about getting duplicates next to each other. So that's going to make sewing a lot easier. So we're going to get chain piecing on this. And the way this goes together is just like this. So we're going to sew these two, and we're going to make a bunch of them and put them together in rows, and then make a larger, I think it's about a lap size, about a 60 by 70 quilt. And we'll get those dimensions as we're finished. One thing to think about, though, when you're using die-cut pieces like this, when everything is exactly the same and these are going to fit together, we want to make sure that we're really conscientious about our seam allowance. You want the 1/4 inch. And in this case, even if you're a little large or small, it's not critical. What is important is that you use the same seam allowance throughout the whole thing, because this seam will be matching across the quilt at various points. And if you don't take the same seam allowance, they're not going to line up real well. So let's go ahead. We've got a quilt to make. I'm ready to get started. Now, there are 9 different fabrics, and there are 7 rectangles per row. So I'm just going to take from the top of the stack and chain piece everything. I'll do my 24 pairs first, then I'll add the 3rd, the 4th, and we'll work on until we get our full rows. And everything is going to go in the same direction. We're not making anything different along the way. And I'll show you at the end what we'll do to get the pattern that we want. But doing it this way first is definitely going to be the easiest. I'm going to begin chain piecing my blocks. And what I've done is counted out 24 of the small squares. That way I'll know when I come to the end of my rows that I need, and I can come back up and start adding onto each row to make them wider, because we will have 7 of these rectangles in each of our rows. So the first thing I do is I line my blocks up nice and even so the corners are square. So I'm going to make sure I use my 1/4 inch. Generally, there will be a place either on the side of your presser foot or the throat plate here that you can line up in order to get your 1/4 inch. Now, some quilting machines, sewing machines will have a 1/4 inch foot, which can be handy, but after you've done it a few times, you do get the idea of where your 1/4 inch will lie. So we're just going to keep adding one after the other. And I will just draw from the top of the pile and go through from one end to the other. And once I'm finished with my first 24, then we will get started on adding more pieces to our strips in order to make them longer. Now, one thing I do want to show you about this, when you get your stack of fabric, as you're drawing a fabric, these were cut folded. So the first one will be face up, the next one will be face down. What I've done is as I'm sewing, I pull the face one down and just set it aside. And then when I finish all the ones that are right side up, I turn my pile over and I'll work from that. So that just seems the easiest way to do it. And so far it's working really well. So I am using a size 11 needle. And I put a new needle in when I start. I always try and start a new quilt with a new needle. I find I have better results and less issues with tension and thread problems and getting the needle, because sometimes if it's not sharp enough, it won't go through the fabric well, and you can get just uneven stitches and even sometimes a bit of bunching in the fabric. And so now I am just cruising along here, and I'm sewing at my 1/4 inch seam. That way I've got everything nice and even. Then once the rows are sewn, I will press these and get a nice, whoops. Okay, I'm going to just set this one aside. There was a wrinkle when it was cut, so I'm going to set that aside, and if I need it in the end, there's a good chance there'll probably be some extra pieces. If I need this in the end, I'll trim it, but in the meantime, I'm just going to put a new one in my pile so I don't lose count. Okay, we were talking needles, we were talking new needles, and now we need to talk seam allowance. 1/4 inch is important. In order for all these to line up and have nice even squares to get the seams where they join nice and even, we need to have a consistent seam allowance that will allow us to piece all these nice and easy, and then they'll look beautiful in the end. So take your time initially, get yourself set up, and do the way you do to get your 1/4 inch, whether it's by your presser foot or the throat plate or whatever works. And some folks will put tape along the side. That's really good too. But the key is to go with that 1/4 inch seam. So let me go ahead and finish sewing this row, and then I'll show you what we do next. I've reached the end of my first 24 blocks, and I'm just going to cut the thread and bring this back, because I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning and start over. The nice thing about doing the chain piecing is everything is held together as I go. And I appreciate that a lot, simply because it makes it a bit easier to manage in the long run. I don't have lots of loose blocks floating around. Everything's joined together, and I know exactly what I need to do next. And in the end, when I go to piece it, it's all together the way I want it to go. And it's just a good functional way for me to do it. So you can see I folded my white square out, and I put the next color on. And I'm just going to continue doing this, and I will go through my pile of fabrics and just keep adding. There we go. And once I get to the end of this row, I will add the white square. So as you can see, it's a very simple pattern to follow. You just alternate your lights, your white fabric with your prints. And there you have it. So let's go ahead and we'll finish this up, and I'll show you how we start the next row, and before you know it, this quilt top will be half finished. Actually, a little more, because all we'll have to do is sew the rows together. But there's a few little tricks along the way I'm going to show you. So let me get to the end of this row and I'll show you what comes next. You can see that I have my rectangle and white square sewn, and I'm doing my chain stitching, and I've started the second rectangle. So we're going to alternate. So we'll have the floral, the white, and the floral. And I'm just going through my stack, and I'm using the colors in the order they come. But what I'm going to do, the way we finish this and do our final piecing, the blocks, or at least the rows, are going to get changed up a little bit. So we won't get quite the repetition, which if you like the repeating squares where they fall in line sequentially, that's great. But I think I kind of want to mix it up a little just to see how it'll look. So as you can see, I just open out my square and I put, whoops, get too many fabrics at once, and I put my rectangle right on top and I sew my 1/4 inch seam. And I will continue this until my pile is finished. All right, I'll check back with you then, and then we'll talk about how we're going to put our rows together. Once all the chain piecing is finished, this is what your quilt top will look like. All the rows are going in the same directions, and all the blocks are in alignment. They're all in the same place. And what we're going to do now is change that around, because as you recall, in this pattern, we start with a rectangle like this, but then the next block needs to start with a white square. So the first thing we're going to do is come in and cut apart 2 rows. So we'll take the top 2 rows off like this, and we'll cut all the way through. And now, before I do anything, I'm going to press this. I will take these 2 and I'm going to press everything in the same direction. It doesn't matter which way, as long as you do everything the same way. And that becomes important for nesting seams. So when you cut your blocks, your rows apart to begin sewing them, remember that your large blocks on the end are where you start pressing and go in the opposite direction. That's what I did. But whatever works for you is fine. Now, the reason we're doing that is we need to, whoops, I'm missing that. We need to switch our row around so that we will get the correct alignment. So this is the top row and this is the second row. They were together. We cut them apart, and now we're going to flip this one around, and look at that. So now we have our alternating block. And because everything is pressed in the same direction, this one is now pressed in that direction, so our seams are going to nest. Let me show you an example. Here's a pair of rows I just finished sewing, and we have our rectangle alternating with the square, so that pattern continues across throughout. And you'll notice all these seams go this way and these seams go that way. And that's going to make this so much easier when you go to put it together. Now, the other thing I want to show you is how to nest your seams. And that's going to become important in order to have good seam alignment, to have nice square corners where these seams join. Now, this is the only place you're going to have the seams align, because this will not join a seam and this will not join a seam. So just make sure those are sewn in the right direction, the way they're pressed, and then here and here and again here is where you are going to align and nest those seams. So if you've not done this before, the easiest way to do it is to use a pin. And because they're pre-pressed, notice how they lay exactly where we want them, in the right direction, which is opposite of each other. So where this one comes this way, this one goes that way, and we're going to put these 2 side by side. And once I align that there, you want to put your thumb and finger on the top and bottom. If you can feel a space between those two seams, you know there's too much distance. And if that were the case, this is what it would look like. You'd have a space from the seam to the seam. They're not aligning. Alternatively, if you feel a bump there, then this is what you'll have, where the seam is on top of the other seam. What we want is to have them right next to each other. And so the best thing to do is lay them flat, put your thumb and finger and just sort of massage it so that you feel that they're nice and flat. And you see how beautiful they come together? When you put a pin in from here to here, that pin will hold that while you're sewing. And it depends on the direction. If you're going to be coming from this direction and you're starting here, you'll want to put your pin in to hold down the seam that's going to be facing the needle. So where the needle is first going to approach your fabric, that's the one you want to pin down to hold it in place. And then just take a look after you've got it pinned and just make sure that that alignment looks great. And then once you do that, we are good to go. So in order to start assembling the quilt, we have our first 2 rows. Then we can do our second 2. You can decide whether you want to sew them in pairs or just cut each one individually. It doesn't really matter. It's a matter of what you prefer. If you've not done it before, doing one at a time is probably easier because then you'll only have one loose strip at a time and it won't get confused or go the wrong direction. So I will have this laid out. I'll bring this strip in and I'll sew it right along here, matching those seams. Then I will go ahead and bring the next strip in and continue that all the way through. And then once all these chained piece rows are cut off and attached, then we are going to have ourselves a quilt. And let me show you how that's going to look. I did a few pieces on the opposite end so you can see how nice this looks when it's all sewn together. Look at that. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, I just love it. These colors are fantastic, the way they just, stand out so bright. That white fabric is a perfect background because the white in the back of these florals just really pops and it makes those colors stand out, which is wonderful. I love it. So that's all there is to making this. Let me go ahead and finish putting the rows together and I'll show you what this looks like when it's finished. Here's a look at the quilt. It turned out so pretty. Don't you just love the way those colors are splashed across against the white background? Oh my goodness, it makes such a great contrast and it looks bright and springy. This is an awesome quilt. I think you'll love making it. So make sure you sign up for the giveaway because you could win this quilt kit. And all you need to do is like this video and watch the entire video and write a comment and make sure that you do all this before the end of April 14th, which is a Sunday. So go ahead and get all that done and put your name in the hat and hopefully you can win this quilt. Thanks so much for joining me. This has been fun to share with you. You have a fantastic rest of your day.